Today, we have wheel hop, and a lot of it.
Oh my God.
You all right?
Yeah. The wheel hop shook so bad. It literally.
My name is Pete, and welcome to my garage. All right, back in the shop we have the V8 S10, or it's actually a GMC Sonoma S10, same thing. But one problem that we're having is wheel hop, as you can see from the video. And whenever you throw a lot of power towards something that originally only had probably 100 horsepower from the 4-cylinder, because this was originally a 4-cylinder truck, now we put, I don't know, 300 horsepower probably to it, to that rear end, and it's not going to last. So what we have is a 7.5-inch rear end that's not a posi at all. There's no limited slip in it. It's an open differential, and with the factory 4-cylinder 2-wheel drive leaf springs, this thing has a lot of wheel hop. So we're going to go ahead and change out the rear differential for a Ford 8.8. As you can see right here, we have the 8.8. And in order to do that, we're going to have to drill out the axles. I'm probably going to send that to a machine shop to have it done. I was going to do it myself, but I think probably better off doing it at a machine shop. All right, we drilled out the drums for the Chevy bolt pattern so we can use our Chevy wheels that we have right here, because the lug pattern is different from the Ford and the Chevy. But without further ado, let's get in here and let's talk about what wheel hop is and what exactly we're going to do to fix it. Okay, so whenever you have a leaf spring suspension, you see this leaf spring that runs right here, it's on both sides, and it is supporting the rear differential right here. And what happens is the rear differential tries to twist up, right? It tries to twist up like this, so it causes the front of this leaf spring to almost oscillate and twist a little bit. And then that's going to cause wheel hop really bad. And you can see in the video of our attempted burnout how much this leaf spring twists. I'm going to put it in slow motion for you here. Okay, and one thing we need to do is try to keep the front of this spring from twisting. And one of the products that we're going to use is something called Caltracs. And Caltracs have been known to do a really good job of taking a leaf spring vehicle, and they've been doing this for years, a leaf spring vehicle, and making it perform very smooth. And people are able to launch at the drag strip with sticky tires and everything very successfully. So what we're going to end up having to do is press out this bushing up here, put in the aluminum bushings from Caltracs, and replace underneath here the spring mount and everything. And then we're also going to put a Ford 8.8 rear end in here, because this little thing is just tiny. This little 7.5 Chevy is just it's gonna get destroyed, especially if we get some traction. So we're gonna go ahead and give it something strong that has limited slip and not an open differential. So yeah, one thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to take the park brake cables off of the Chevy rear end and transfer them over to the Ford rear end. and then also our brake lines. Other than that, you know, it's pretty straightforward. I do think we are going to lose our sway bar, but that shouldn't be too bad, especially after we have the Caltracs on there. Okay, here is our Caltracs setup. You can see right there, Caltracs. It's Calvert Racing. They've been in the business a long time making traction bars. This is high quality. Looks like powder coated. Pretty thick steel and everything. And this is what does all the magic. You can see here, you have the bracket that goes underneath the leaf spring right here. I think I have it backwards just on my mock-up here because this is where the shock mount is right there. And you can see down here we have some really nice Heim joints to keep it from binding. And this part, actually the front leaf spring bushing and everything gets replaced with one of these aluminum bushings. And the leaf spring sits in here right like this, and so whenever it is under load, this will almost pull down because it'll want to pull down when the leaf spring tries to extend and everything. And then it's actually, this bar is going to hit the leaf spring. It's going to basically hold it down, and it's going to hold pressure down and keep good traction. So these are going to be really nice to go with that 8.8 rear end right there. So it should be a really good setup. So let's go ahead and let's get this put on this car. Okay, since we have we're no longer going to be using our Chevy drums, we have Ford drum brakes. Well, the bolt pattern, we're going to switch over to a Chevy bolt pattern so we can reuse the wheels that he has right here. So we don't have a mixture of Ford wheels on the back and Chevy wheels on the front. Makes it a lot easier. So we just need to change over the axle studs on the Ford rear end. We're going to have to re-drill the axles on that one to where it has Chevy bolt pattern because there is a difference. So in order to get the drums to work, I made this template right here out of my wife's Silhouette machine, kind of like one of those Cricut sticker makers. And, you know, it's kind of like a CAD program. It's not that great, but I was able to get it close enough and everything to where here's our Ford lug pattern. And then I had little holes to where I could center punch and then drill holes for a Chevy bolt pattern. And as you can see, just to verify here, I can, oops, gotta get the right pattern lined up. Now we can fit our Chevy drum on, or our Ford drum on a Chevy bolt pattern right there. Now I am going to send out the axles to have them drilled because that's going to have to be a little bit more exact. And the drum actually centers on the actual hub of the axle there on the Ford rear end. So we don't have to worry about any run out or anything like that. So I got both drums drilled. Now I verified that works. Now I'm going to have to take the park brake cables from the Chevy and swap them over to the Ford rear end. So I'm going to have to disconnect the park brake cable from way down in here. I don't know if you can see, it's pretty dark. So I'm going to have to take my brake shoes off a little bit. I'm not going to completely disassemble the brakes back here because it doesn't really matter. This thing's pretty much going in the trash. So as long as I get the park brake cables off of this one, then I can transfer them over to the other one once I get the rear end in. But I have to disconnect it so I can take the rear end out. So without further ado, I'm going to take these brake cables apart. Hopefully that gave me enough slack by adjusting it there. If I can get enough slack in this. There we go. Get it off of there. I need to save that spring. Either that or I can use the forward spring. I'll have to see which one works. Now, trying to get a park brake cable, this little piece right here out of here, is kind of difficult. But if you have it disconnected, you can slide a wrench over there that fits it. 13. There we go, 13. Fits over and it compresses those fingers. You can just pull it out the backing plate. See, those are the little fingers you got to compress. Cool, so we can just set that aside. Now I got to go to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, now I got to take off the drive shaft right here. I'm going to have to put a conversion U-joint to convert that to the Ford flange that goes on the Ford differential. They make a U-joint that converts this to the Ford side. We'll just let that rest on the ground. Just need to disconnect the stabilizer bar, the shocks, the brake lines, and then this thing I can pretty much take out. Alright, so the park brake cable up here, bracket, and the brake line, they're held on with these two bolts on the cover there, on the differential cover. So I'm going to go ahead and take those two bolts out and let all this hang out. And then I also need to disconnect the lines here. I believe the lines on the wheel cylinders on the Ford differential and the Chevy are the same thread, so that's kind of nice. And hopefully it all kind of routes the same. I guess we'll find out. If not, I can make a couple brake lines. And then also we need to undo the sway bar from here and the shock mount. And then once I'm done, then I can get those lower bolts for the U-bolts and get that taken off, and then this whole differential comes off. I believe the Ford differential probably weighs about 100 pounds more. It's way beefier than this 7.5 right here. This thing is tiny. The little axles just look so small compared to that Ford. So let's get it done. Now, all I have left is to take the U-bolts out. And then this diff will be free, and then we just pull it out. Or I might just drop the springs down because I'm doing those Caltracs anyway, so I have to take the front spring bolt out to drop it down to push out that bushing. So maybe I'll just do that way, and we'll kind of slide the diff forward. I don't know. I'll figure it out. that one didn't want to go very good. Might have to cut that one off. Neither does that one. Might have to resort to the cutoff wheel. It's no big deal though. We're replacing them anyways. Okay, so I got everything disconnected from the differential. Park brake cables, brake lines, everything. If I really want to, I could take the differential, lift it up and slide it out, but it doesn't look like there's going to be that much room. Plus I have to take the springs down anyway for the Caltracs. So I'm probably better off just taking these front spring bolts, lowering the springs down, sliding the differential forward, and then I'll be able to slide it out. I got the drive shaft hanging, but I might want to pull it out. Since the rear end's up in the air, I can probably pull it out without losing any fluid out of the transmission, so we'll see. I think my chances of these bolts coming out are pretty slim. The nut came off, but I bet the bolt's seized to the bushing, so we'll see. Might have to get the air hammer out. Okay. So here's a problem that we run into a lot with leaf springs in this fuel tank on the side. We hit that fuel tank. So either we can pivot the leaf spring over to the side to get it out, or we can just cut the bolt off, and then on the next bolt we get a new bolt, put it in this side, and put a nut on that side. And I think that's what I'm going to end up doing. All right, last bolt. Now I have the springs supported by the jack, so it won't come flying down. Or at least that's the idea. But at this point, the differential's pretty much just loose and it's kind of hanging out there. Tumbled. I don't want it flipping upside down because all the fluid will come out the vent. So I'll flip it back the other direction. Come on. Hopefully I got enough preload on that jack. All right. At this point, the differential, springs are laying on the ground. I'll pull the differential out. I'll swap out the fronts for the Caltracs bushings, and then I'll get the Caltracs ready, and I'll put the 488 in its place. So stay tuned for part 2.